जल्दी सरकार ने WPS 46 कर दिया।
अब शांत रहिए, आवाज में।
I, Ghanshyam Singh, an assistant teacher, Black Diamond Public School, Badi Katona, Jammu, Bihar, is now to present before you a lecture on the topic NEP 2020 in-house training programs scheduled here in the school premises. Before, I would like to give my analysis over the policies issued by this new education policy 2020. First of all, I would like to pay proper attention to the different characteristics around which this policy has been framed up. Here, I would like to assess, as I was discussing just before, that we will have to see the main characteristics of this policy, and even before this, it should be made very clear before the audience, before the trainees, that when this policy has been approved by, if this question came up, then I have to say that Union Cabinet of India approved new education policy 2020 on 29th July 2020. It outlines the vision of India's new education policy. This document also replaces the previous National Policy on Education 1986, and this policy aims to transform India's education system by 2040. What has been the main vision of new education policy 2020? This national education policy envisions an education system rooted in India ethos that contributes directly to transforming India, that is Bharat, sustainably into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing high quality education to all, and thereby making India a global knowledge superpower. It is obvious to find out the main vision of NEP 2020. This policy emphasizes not only the modern technical strategies of different streams of knowledge, but it also believes in the fact that the ancient Indian values of education should also be carried on, and only when these two aspects is being mixed up, that is the modern education and the ancient Indian education, then the west way of education giving system will be evolved, and through this only India will be able to attain global knowledge superpowermanship. Now we will see that at how many stages the national education policy has been framed up. I see that National Education Policy 2020 were framed up on 4 stages. At first stage, some recommendations have been given to implement the new changed education policy at school education. At the second stage, it should be shifted at higher education level. At third stage, it should be shifted to other key areas of focus, and fourth stage, making it happen. One by one we will see the details of each stage of the education, what we have and what we have to implement here at the present day. Seeing it gradually, one by one, I am going to start the first stage education implementing areas, that is at school education. At this stage, it was provisioned by giving the following points. First one, early childhood care and education, the foundation of learning. In this point, everything is primarily focused on the early childhood education, because it is assumed, and it is truly assumed, that early childhood stage is the foundation of learning, is the foundation of whatever a man will do in his career finally. The instinct towards learning has already been known and made children to be known, on the basis of which he will be able to craft his career smartly, brilliantly, and I think that splendidly. The second point, foundational literacy and numeracy, an urgent and necessary prerequisite to learning. With this point, the new education policy focuses much that from the very beginning of learning, that is at the childhood level, foundational literacy and numeracy must be developed in the children, and it is assumed an urgent and necessary prerequisite to learning. The third point is curtailing dropout rates and ensuring universal access to education at all levels. Here, this point is very, very notable to say that generally my experience in this field has been in such a way that because of the different reasons, mainly the money power, I think that at least 20% of the meritorious students have to drop out their education, and they will have to go away from the mainstream of learning. And because of thinking this very problem, the education framework of new education policy 2020 put it in important point to be carried towards, and to how much levels to do this point to be executed truly on ground level. Have to see that how many machineries have been framed up to implement this point of education at school level. The fourth point is curriculum and pedagogy in schools. Learning should be holistic, integrated, enjoyable and engaging. In this point, we see that the curriculum framed up by the school and also the CBSE, that to how much extent these provisions and rules are adaptable to the circumstances and surroundings of the areas from where the children come to school to have education. The fifth point, which new education policy holds, and that's the teachers. Here in this policy, the role of teachers in making the students learn the curriculum and syllabus betterly have been made very, very crucial. Teachers will have to be responsible. Teachers will have to be duteous, and teachers will have to be education lover. They will never work at the cost of the children's education. They will never work at the cost of the interests away from the students. And the sixth point is equitable and inclusive education, learning for all. Here in this point we see that learning for all has been the slogan of the present functioning government, and because of the view of the government, I think that the policy framer would have certainly pay much and much focus in including this point in his final document. Seventh, efficient resourcing and effective governance through school complexes, clusters. Next, quality universities and colleges. A new and forward-looking vision for India's higher education system. 10th, institutional restructuring and consolidation. Next, towards a more holistic and multidisciplinary education. Next, optimal learning environments and support for students. Motivated, energized and capable faculty. Equity and inclusion in higher education. Next, teacher education. 16th, reimaging vocational education. 17th, catalyzing quality academic research in all fields through a new national research foundation. 18th, transforming the regulatory system of higher education. 19th, effective governance and leadership for higher education institution. At the third stage, as I have discussed earlier one, that the new education policy focus is can be assessed as the following points. When we see that at the third stage, what and how does the new education policy 2020 is functioning can be discussed under the following titles and subtitles. The first title, professional education. This policy pay much attention on professional education. It has been generally seen so far that earlier people believed in getting education without making themselves capable to fight against all those problems which they will have to face to earn their livelihood. And so these policies paid much attention on this deficiency of the previous education policy. For combating and for replacing a better option of the earlier education policies, this deficiency, these policies pay much stress on getting professional education. This suggests the students not to have knowledge without practical, not to have knowledge without learning the practical equipments and weapons with which they will fight against all those problems coming on the way where they are living. And so generally at every level of education, especially after higher secondary level, it was stressed much to have education with professional attitude. The another point on which the new education policy 2020 pay much attention is adult education and lifelong education. Generally it has been seen here in India that the changing of Western civilization rapidly by the youngsters of Indian or totally responsible for downrooting the values of Indian morale, and so making the youngsters adaptable, so making the youngsters normal to see every knowledge related to education, one adult education, only when the education will have to be implemented in according to the adult knowledge, which generally creates much and much problems in the educational premises wherever it is functioning. And generally it has been assumed behind this concept that if adult education is made free to all youngsters, then I think that the corruption, then misconduct of the students must be overcome, and they will not take place in anywhere of educational world. But this can never be recommended with free mind. No. A strong controlling organ or machinery must be developed to look after all the activities being happened just after implementing this point on the floor route. The third point, on which new education policy 2020 pay much stress, is to promote Indian language, arts and cultures. It is quite different from the previous education policy. It is only to carry on the different language of our country to be known maximum by the people living in our country. And if these policies pay much stress on arts and culture aspect, behind this I think that the policy framework must have the ideology about ancient Indian arts and culture. However, I am coming on another point on which the new education policy 2020 is stressing is technology use and integration. It is obvious the present age is the age of technology. The present age is the age of scientific development. Generally, a nation is assumed a great and richest only when they have the competent youngsters, like so jubilant, and like I would like to say the name, one with whom I have met there in my school premises, is Mr. Sachin Kumar. He is much and much jubilant, much and much, I think that the full of energy, having technology, and because of his competency in technology, he made the teachers like me, an old age teacher, to make requests so many times. But I think that I salute his technical knowledge, but I also would like to say him just as an advice, just for his better career, that he should, I think that he should live out this type of habit and proceed only with his technical knowledge. Believe that he is the master of the age in which we are living. And The next point on which new education policy is stressing much is online and digital education, assuring equitable use of technology. Very clear, I think I do not need to interpret it because you all are, I think, that capable to understand, and I have to deliver so many things and so many utterances to make you very easier to understand the content of the topic in-house training today. And the new education policy is implementing with his stress on the fourth stage, saying making it happen. 4 points can be counted here in this stage, that is strengthening the Central Advisory Board of Education. Number 2, financing affordable and quality education for all. 3rd, implementation. And 4th, list of abbreviation. Before I do give my clear utterances on the topic concerned, I would like to share with you a very short video to make you learn the content easier, and so just wait for a
Namaskar viewers, I, Dr. Renu Tomar, welcome you to CEC Gurukul lectures. Friends, if you remember, in our previous lectures, we have been discussing policies which have been people just to assess that what kind of transformation or change it is going to bring to the education system. Friends, NEP 2020 is supposed to be transformational. How is it going to be transformational? How it is going to be different from the previous policy? Friend, just to retract back to the NPE 1986 which we discussed in our last lecture. How this policy is different from 1986 policy, NPE 1986 policy. It is different because in NPE, the central agenda was to see to it that the equity is maintained in the education system. It was basically concerned more about providing equal opportunities to everybody, particularly to the disadvantaged group. And as far as NEP is concerned, NEP 2020 is concerned, this policy is aiming at bringing together the science and technology and the culture. It is also looking at the India from the perspective of developed nation. It has tried to cover what kind of expectation from the education system would be there in after 30 years or 40 years. So friends, this education policy is transformational, as I have already said, because it has tried to envisage most of the things which we are facing today as well as we are supposed to face today. It has talked about how education should be transformed so that it become global in nature as well as it adhere to our civilization, it adheres to our cultural values. So it has brought together the IT along with the cultural parameters. That is why in this policy we have talked about that how Indian languages are important from the perspective of education system and why and how they should be emphasized. by educationists, by the state government, central government and various bodies which are involved in implementation of NEP 2020. So friends, to begin the lecture on NEP 2020, first of all let us try to find out that what has gone into, what is the background of NEP 2020. Friends, it has covered 2 lakh villages and 3050 districts, 3050 districts, 29 states and 8 UT. The suggestions has been sought from the whole India. 26 lakh suggestions were sought. On the basis of that, this policy has been finalized. From the angle of the fact that now the student suicide rate has increased because of the stress which education is giving. That is why through this policy we have tried to replace stressful education with joyful education. Evaluation pattern has been questioned, which is based upon memorization, and new evaluation pattern has been introduced so that the real assessment of the skill, the real assessment of the parameters which are enjoyable to the students, which are relevant to the students, they can be assessed. So friends, apart from this background, there are other points also which I would like to touch upon, that in this policy there has been a discussion about multi-entry and multi-exit. What does multi-entry and multi-exit means? Multi-entry means the student would be allowed to exit the education system, and on the basis of the credits the student has earned, he can again re-enter the education system in the same university or same college as well as different college. That is why it is multi-entry and multi-exit. That means it is not important that the student would have to enroll again in the same college or a same university or same school. The credit which has been earned by the student, they can be utilized by him in the different system as well. Apart from that, at the secondary level, students have been provided choice of subjects. Here, the policy makers have tried to get away with the division between science and humanities. They have tried to bring arts with science so that students also realize that the subjects are not being taught for the perspective of the subject, for the fact that they have to memorize or understand the subject. Subjects are being taught to the students so that they can be utilized by them in their life. So there are going to be more choice of subjects at the secondary level, and there have been emphasis on self-evaluation as well as peer evaluation and evaluation by the teacher. Friends, as all of us know, presently the evaluation is very systematic and it is being done by the centralized bodies or the governance which has been authorized to do the evaluation, and due to that there are times that the real evaluation doesn't go. The student is assessed by the fact that what he has understood and what he has memorized. To narrate a small story, now what we are doing in our evaluation system is, there was a jungle. In the jungle there was a school, a very posh and very good school. And most of the animals wanted that their children should go to that school. All the animals got their children enrolled in that school, and when the first semester result came, most of the animals found that their ward had failed in the parameter of climbing the tree. The elephant, when he found that his baby elephant has failed in that parameter, he thrashed him. Similarly, the giraffe was also very angry and annoyed with his child. Nobody tried to find out that whether the parameter for which the child was assessed, he or she is meant for that parameter or not. So the all animals, they were very angry with their children, and they were going through the forest. It was noticed by a tree. A tree asked, "Why all of you are annoyed with your children? I can see the sullen faces of your children, as well as I can see that you are very angry. What happened at school?" They said, "Our children have failed and monkey's child has topped." Then the tree asked them that what was the parameter of assessment for which your children have failed and the child of the monkey has passed. They said, "Climbing the tree." The banyan tree told them, when you are sending the child to the school where they are being assessed for the skill which is not natural to them, which they are not supposed to learn, then it is natural that they will fail. The problem is not with your children, but the problem is with the system, with the school. The problem is with you, that you are trying to assess your children for the skills which even you have not mastered, which you will also fail in the skill in which you want your children to pass. Thereby the animals understood that they are evaluating the children on the wrong skill. So friends, I would like to say that the present evaluation system is similar to that. We are evaluating all children on the same skills. And what is that skill? That skill is to memorize. If the child is good at memorizing, the child is rated as the topper, as a good student. Friends, this policy has tried to get away from that evaluation system, that assessment system. It has tried to do justice to the children as well as education system. Now let us talk about school education system, because this policy has been divided into four divisions, and first of the division, out of the four parts, first part which we will like to take up is school education. What are the key points of school education? 10 plus 2 pattern is replaced with 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. We will try to get into the detail what is 5, what is 3 and what is 3 and what is 4. Foundation stage is characterized by 3 years of pre-primary education till 1st and 2nd class. Preparatory stage, which is 3 years, has been classified for 3rd, 4th and 5th class. Middle stage, which is again for the 3 years, is for 6, 7 and 8 class. So friends, with this we cover 5 plus 3 plus 3. And the 4th is the secondary stage, which is for 4 years, that is class 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th. The school education system has also expanded RTE. RTE, which was characterizing only the age group of 6 to 18. Now it is going to cover age group 3 to 18. That means right to education will be with the students who are in the age group 3 to 18. That also makes it necessary for the civilized society to ensure that the children are there in the school till they are 18 years of old. So what policy has tried to touch upon is that the secondary education, the senior secondary education becomes important as well as necessary for the students, because friends, till 18 years the child is supposed to do his class 12th. So here we will have most of the children doing class 12th, passing class 12th because of the provision of RTE. In addition to the midday meals, breakfast has been added. The policy has also tried to discuss that how to dropout rates should be controlled. So reducing dropout rates has also been at the center of this policy. It has also tried to work upon that. We will discuss in detail about that. to go further discussing the key points of the school education system, the early childhood education is beginning from 3 years onwards, and it has also tried to ensure equal opportunity to all, that is females, SC, ST, etc. It has also talked about pool of resources. What is pool of resources? In this policy, the formally those who are not engaged in the education system as teachers, the pool will be created for those educated young people who might be there in some different professions but can be used as resources for the education system. That pool would be maintained by various governments, state governments, district governments, as well as the school management, and that pool will be utilized to ensure that education does not suffer. So thereby the community involvement will improve and increase. This policy has also worked upon recruitment of teachers, particularly the deployment and deputation of teachers. The promotion of the teacher has been ensured in the same school, because in the previous policies it was made mandatory, in the system it was made mandatory that usually to get the promotion the teacher has to leave the school and go to some other school. So this policy is trying to ensure that the teachers who are recruited, they would also be going for in-service training through different parameters, through different utilizing IT. They can be going through seminars and workshops, global as well as Indian, and they will have to enhance their education skill as well as their teaching skill. Apart from that, the teachers' promotion can take place in the same school itself in which they are teaching. So this thing has been controlled in this particular policy. At the secondary stage, as we talked before also, their students have been provided more subject choices, and semester system has been introduced. Rather than having an annual system or half yearly system, a semester system has been introduced at the secondary stage. The level of subjects would also be having more branches. That means not only just the subject choices will be made more open, but also level of subjects would also be increased. The role of the boards, that is the different boards, the state boards and the central boards, shall be restricted as far as assessment and evaluation of children is concerned. So thereby scope of improvement will also be given to the students. How the students will be given scope of improvement? By having examination twice a year. So the students can also improve their academic as well as go for various subjects which they are interested in, as well as they will be evaluated for their level of subjects. The training of teachers has been made mandatory for 50 hours. So teacher will have to undergo training for 50 hours. That has become a mandatory part in this policy. There has been discussion on pedagogy and curriculum also. E-content shall be introduced so that the students utilize their phone, their PCs and their laptops more, and they understand that how the e-content is to be filtered to reach certain conclusions, to understand skills, to utilize that information so that that information can be transformed into knowledge and further into skill. So there is going to be more work on e-content. There would be virtual labs. Virtual lab has been again and again talked about in this policy. Diksha, which is very important word which has been introduced in this policy, that means digital infrastructure for knowledge and sharing. Education system, particularly the school education system, will be evolving Diksha. So when the digital infrastructure will be in place, then naturally all the students would be able to get advantage of the e-content. Then there is going to be more emphasis on DTH channels and more emphasis on utilizing smartphones for academic improvement as well as skill learning. Central advisory boards shall be created as to advise the academicians for implementation as well as after the implementation. Another important thing which has been and again stressed in NEP 2020 is environmental education. There is going to be stress on environmental education and knowledge of India. What is knowledge of India? Knowledge of India, friends, means that the student should be knowing what India is. They has to understand that what is the culture of India. They have to understand different languages. More languages should be introduced to students so that they master more languages, so that they will be able to improve the languages as well as the learning, as it has been emphasized by various educationists before also, and in this NEP 2020 also this point has been raised, that the children who are till in the age group of 1 to 6, they can learn better in their mother tongue. That is why it is very important that mother tongue is emphasized. That is why bilingual teaching has to be introduced. 3 language formula will not be replaced, it will stay as it is, but the language, the Indian languages would be emphasized in the education system as a result of NEP 2020. This is something which has been emphasized in NEP 2020. The separation of streams as we usually have, that it is humanities, then it is commerce, and then we have science. This is going to be erased as the result of NEP 2020 implementation. The streams will be merged in such a way that a child who is studying chemistry can also be studying art education. The child who is studying music can also be understanding economics. So, more options will be available as far as subjects are concerned to children. Vocational education will also be introduced. That means the children, particularly at the higher and the secondary level, will be asked to go through vocational education. They will have vocational education open to them so that the skills can be improved for the children who have decided to go out of education system after passing the school. So what they can do is that they can take up vocational education in school itself. Sports will also be emphasized because sports usually brings children together. So sports is to be emphasized and it is to be used, the playfulness has to be used for learning. So education system has to be rewritten, revived in such a manner that sports, co-curricular, extracurricular activities are utilized more, because they are supposed to be more friendly. These type of activities are supposed to be more friendly, which children enjoy. They should be utilized for the children of all age group for their learning. So this is something which has been discussed in NEP 2020. It has also tried to emphasize on the tribal population. It has also talked about the tribal population languages. So it is trying to cover up the languages which are being covered by tribal population. Then it has also talked about national curriculum framework by NCERT and the aim of NEP 2020. Friends, this is a very important remark. By 2030, there should be 100% literacy and numeracy achieved. So this is the target of NEP 2020. Friends, we will carry on with the lecture. For the time being, Namaskar.
all have well heard and expect that you must be more normal, more familiar with the content which we have today as a topic in house workshop today. Concluding all the above said utterances regarding the new education policy 2020, I would like to sum up the lecture by the following some points. First one is recognizing, identifying and fostering the unique capabilities of each student. Here it should be interpreted by saying that with the new approach of education, each student is expected to be made more recognized and identified with the content which they have before them, just as learning. The policy also focuses on the flexibility. It doesn't believe in rigidity. It always expects that the education system must be flexible. It should not be harder and harder enough to make a student weaker one instead of strengthening him. It also concluded that no hard separations between arts and sciences, between curriculum and extracurriculum activities, between vocational and academic streams, etc. As my approach to this very point is concerned, I would like to say that it will not be easier for the school system implementer or regulator to keep the students in such a mental frame-up that he will think curriculum and extracurriculum activities equal. He will think arts and sciences equal, and he will think that vocational and academic streams are equal, because these two are the totally different from each other, as they have experienced, and I also as a teacher experienced in so far long teaching years. But this policy expects so, and I think that it will also be fruitful, or according to the expectation of the policy framer, but it will take time. It will take time, and will have to wait with patience to how much extent it will be very easier for the students to understand both the above said streams contrary to each other are equal. Another point which I conclude, that this policy also focuses on multidisciplinarity and a holistic education. This expectation of the policy framer is, I think, that according to the nature of the people with which they are proceeding with their life forward. the thing next on which I would like to pay some focus, that is that this policy emphasis on conceptual understanding, creativity and critical thinking. Regarding this, it should also be welcomed that the aim of learning, the aim of teaching must be to make the students creative, to make the students critical thinking, to make the students understand the concepts on which the education is going on, to make the students to understand the conceptions on which their different faculties are going on. Another point which I find from the policy on that it also promotes on multilingualism and the power of language in teaching and learning. The next point on which the policy also pay focuses is that is on a regular formative assessment for learning, and I think that as far as the formative assessment for learning is concerned, it has also been assumed as an essential weapon for making the students easier to understand the content before them. As far as in my schools concerned, I would like to assess here that on this type of assessment has been going on from the very some past years, and it has been experienced also here that by regular formative assessment, which has been named time to time by different names, as that is the periodic assessment or as that is the summative assessments, all types of assessments must be made very, very compulsory and mandatory for making the students to learn the content very easy and brilliantly. The next point which I noticed in this policy document is that it pays extensive use of technology in teaching and learning. Another point on which the policy focuses extensive use of technology in teaching and learning, respect for diversity and respect for the local contexts, full equity and inclusion, synergy in curriculum across all levels of education, teachers and faculty as the heart of the learning process. The point which attracted me much and much from this policy document is this very point. Here it is generally assumed by the policy framemaker that teachers and faculties must be put at the center, must be treated with equal payment, must be treated with adequate payment, and because of that he will be able to keep the system on proper track, because if they are the heart of the institution, educational institution, then I think that heart is what and by which way it works. If it will stop working, then what will happen? Then what will happen to the body? In the same way, this should be very, very remarkable and noted point given by the policy filmmaker. With the line with which I would like to conclude today's in-house speech is now new education policy proposes this setting up of an Indian Institute of Translation and Interpretation, while also laying significant emphasis on Sanskrit and other Indian languages. Thank you. Have a nice day.